Although folks no longer have chains around their ankles, they still have chains around their head.
What brings you to South Africa?
The food. I had a speech impediment. As I talk, every single word I have to cognitively think about. But that limitation actually became my gift. I just had this burning desire to change lives. I actually rented out a room and I wanted to talk about mindset. I'm waiting for people to show up. 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go. I just started talking to every chair. I started talking to the wall. The lady comes in and she says, "Excuse me, sir, when are your people going to show up?" I said, "Ma'am, it's standing room only." And she says, "Well, may I stand with you? Because you say some good things." That when God is giving you something, you don't need external validation. Your breaking point is your breakthrough. If you call yourself a leader and you're not leading others, you're just taking a walk.
Renault Ross.
Yeah.
What brings you to South Africa?
The food. Oh my gosh. Where do I start? Gosh, I tell you, I say the people, right? And I got to tell you all a story. First time I came to South Africa was 7 years ago, and the time before that was 1612, right? I had no choice at 1612 because I was on the Uber Atlantic, if you know what I mean, headed over to the United States. But anyway, I came 7 years ago, and I just had this burning desire to change lives. And when I came over, I actually rented out a room about this size, and I was planning on running some promotions and having folks come over into a room. And I wanted to talk about mindset because I honestly believe that although folks no longer have chains around their ankles, they still have chains around their head, right? So I get here, I'm in the room, I'm waiting for people to show up. 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by. And it dawned on me, nobody's coming, right? And there will be a lot of things I say on this podcast. Please, please, please take notes because here's the thing is that when God is giving you something, right? You don't need external validation. You have to do it. Okay.
Mm.
You don't buy a goldfish and go next door and buy the instructions for how that goldfish is supposed to act. And when people come over, you're like, do your thing now. Remember you did that last week, right? And so I tell you that because literally I just started talking to every chair. I started talking to the wall. And the lady comes in and she says, "Excuse me, sir, when are your people going to show up?" I said, "My people, my people." I said, "Ma'am, it's standing room only. I'm just the only brother standing." And she says, "Well, may I stand with you? Because you say some good things." No joke, right? And I must have dumped on that lady, right? I tell you that story because then I went back to my room and I started praying to G Daddy. And I said, "God, I came here for a purpose, right? And I need to fulfill that purpose." The next day, I get up, I go downstairs, I'm talking, and someone says, "Are you from America?" Guys, I've been there, right? Can I show you around, right? And while they're showing me around, I'm sharing these idioms, and she's taking notes. And she said, "You're very wise." I said, "Yeah, been through some things." She said, "Do you mind if my people come out to listen to you talk?" True story.
Wow.
3 days later, she rented a room bigger than the room that I had initially rented. And she had project managers, she had pastors, she had local folks, business folks that came out. I went through all of my books. They prayed for me. I was in tears. And that's what happened the first time I came out. Here's the thing is that when you're on purpose and you're in your place, nothing can take your place because sometimes it can be your turn, but not your time. And other times it's your time, but not your turn. Does that make sense? And
Mm.
come to find out, my media person didn't recognize the number. And no, and she hit decline, and that's why the ads were not ran. But
Wow.
anyway,
Oh my gosh. And then it led to that whole
it
experience.
led to that whole experience. My whole life is experiences.
Yeah. And then you went back home. What did you take? Did you take anything back with you? Because you said it's experiences,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's interesting because when I travel, I'm so loaded with things I wanna learn, but also there's some things I want to give as well. So I'm gonna answer your question. So when I travel, there are three things that I journal. What did I like, right? What did I learn, right? And the last is what did I leave, right?
Okay.
Right, right. So I learned a lot. I learned about the different tribes, obviously. I learned about the different types of food. Wow, the food is amazing, right? And what did I leave? I think I left who God has been in me, in others, right? Because if you think about life, you're doing one or two things. You're leaving a mark or you're going to leave a scar. I remember you said that you want to leave a mark. When you leave a mark, come on now, the aroma of who he is in you should get on them, if that makes any sense, right?
Mm,
Right.
mm.
So,
Like there's this one, as you're speaking, there's this one thing coming to my mind, and it's I always think that there's two ways to operate. You can operate in fear or in faith.
yeah.
And I was speaking to one of my clients once, and we were having this conversation around fear versus faith. And she was saying she used a way to describe it because I was telling her about like times when we've pitched and when we got opportunities and when we didn't get opportunities. And she was talking about how when you enter a room with fear, it's almost as though someone can smell the
Mhm.
fear. And when you enter a room with faith, it's almost like someone can smell the faith. It's an aura. I think that's what the kids are saying nowadays. It's aura, right? And that aura is it's a feeling that you emit or that you evoke in people around you based on the way that you act, right?
Yeah. Well said.
And my interaction with you is, you know, confidence. You know, you're rooted in what you know you're here to do.
Hmm.
And that's why I wanted to bring you on this podcast because I wanted to get a little bit down and gritty into the roots because, you know, you're someone who's got immense experience when it comes to working in Fortune 500 companies, um, military experience. Like, can we actually tell us about that? How do you get into the military? Like, because the thing is,
Well,
in South Africa, right? Like, we have SANDF, but it's not the same as like US
yeah,
military. Like
yeah.
the culture in America, from our perspective, you know, we watch these movies,
Hmm.
we watch, you know, all these stories
Hmm.
on the news of different operations that are having. You know, we have this very. I think we know more about your military than we do about ours, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
But we see it through that lens of movies and
yeah,
news. We don't see it on the ground. So tell us more. Like, how did you get into the military? How
yeah,
did that even get
yeah.
come about?
Yeah. So I'm gonna pause there, but I'm gonna go back because I want to talk about fear and faith, and I think this is really,
Okay.
really important. So let's double click it and look behind the bullet points, as I like to say.
Happy.
So when you think about fear, spell fear,
FEAR.
false evidence appearing real, right? That's all fear is, right?
Mm,
Because fear is believing what you cannot see to come to pass. So the cousin of fear is faith. Faith is believing what you cannot see to come to pass. Faith stands for forwarding all issues to heaven, right? So confidence, confidence comes from self-discipline. See, the more self-disciplined you are, right, the more self-respect you have and the more self-confidence you have.
mm,
The reason why I can speak with so much confidence is because I practice who I am in private so I get a chance to rehearse who I am in public. Does that make
mm,
sense?
mm,
Because there's a difference between character and charisma, right? You want to have both because character is the hat if you're pulling the rabbit out the hat, right? Charisma is the rabbit. And when you find people that have more charisma, they have to always pull it out. They have to always have a joke. They have to always. But when you have character, you can walk into the room and you don't have to say anything else. If that makes any
mm,
sense, right?
mm,
See, my reputation, you Google my name, you look at LinkedIn and the people that I'm connected with, up Bill Gates, you name it. People say, how did you get connected with Bill Gates? Well, I got connected with his mentee. Okay. And I was talking about one of my mentees that I had just gotten placed in a position. And he started talking about his mentee, I mean his mentor. He said, well, he created the alt control delete. I said, before we have this second glass of wine, do you mind if I get your card? And so I got back to Atlanta and we connected. I said in Fort Delta. No, but I tell you all that not to impress you, but to impress upon you what you think about, you become, but how you That is what you attract. People always say, well, I'm chasing success. Well, think about it. You're going to always be behind it.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
You want to attract success.
mm,
So be what success is attracted to: kindness, temperance, humility. Does that make sense?
mm,
And
mm,
you never have to chase. Okay.
mm.
Now let's talk about the military. So it's interesting because I never planned on going into the military, right? Well, one thing I had, we all have these character traits. I was always self-disciplined, a very self-disciplined person. And if I can tell the story, a friend of mine was going into the military and he needed someone to take him to, we call it the MEP station. And this is where they process you in, you do your paperwork. And so I'm sitting there just like this. I'm just sitting there. And the recruiter says, come over here, because they have a quota that they need to have so many people that come into the military
Mm,
to do basic jobs like chip the paint off the ship and add it back on, right?
mhm.
And my buddy, he had a specialized position, right? Nuclear, right? That's huge, right? And so the guy looks at me and he says, "You look smart," right? Which I was a pretty smart kid, right? But the net of it is he recruited me for a general duty position. Basically, I would have been a janitor, right?
Okay, okay.
True story. So I go into the military, and I want you all to gather from what I'm saying from my story is my gift, and I know my gift. My gift is my personality. My gift is my ability to connect, um, emotional intelligence. And when I was in the military, going through basic training, the recruiter develop a love for me. He would say, "It's something about you," because I would defy everything. He would come in at 3 a.m. in the morning. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, right? He kicked the trash can one day, right? And let me just reenact what he said, okay? He says, "You little turds, I worked you all so hard last night. I went home and my wife wouldn't give me any loving." True story, right? And the liquor store was closed, right? And so here I am, this little, 18, 19-year-old kid. I'm lying in my barrack, and everybody's afraid they're standing up. And I said, "Well, I did have a little bit of fun last night, sir." Because I was from the Soweto, I was from the inner city. And I knew they couldn't touch me, right? He said, "Are you saying you made love to my wife?" I said, "I'm just saying I had a little bit of fun, right?" And so he saw a defiance, but also he saw leadership, in its unorthodox form, right? And so he said, "Give me 50 push-ups." So I do 50 push-ups. He says, "Oh, you're a leader, huh?" He said, "Can you march these 85 men to the chow hall?" And in my leadership abilities at that point, I said this. I said, "If you want to sleep, stay on the left. If you want to eat, come to the right." And that's was my story of my first leadership role. And I was promoted the same day, and I was demoted the same
What?
day. The reason being is because we get cold weather. And I was in Chicago, if you all are familiar with Chicago. It was so cold, I saw Superman in an Uber. He threw his cape in the back. It's like, "Nah, bro, I ain't flying today, right?" And so half the folks came back, and I turned them around, and we went back to the barracks. And the company commander said, "Hey, if you were on the ship, you would have lost the war because you would have left half your men at bay." But anyway, I tell you all that because I ended up being the person that carries the flag uh, person. And when I graduated, you could get only one or two things. You can get E2, so your ranks is up from 1 to 9, or you can get a designated A school. What an A school is that you can get a specialized training.
Okay.
Remember, I was destined to be ship's duty, so they could do either or, not both. I got both. First time in history. Okay, and that started my career. And when I went through specialized training school, I was a leader for the class. And I graduated top of my class, and I got a chance to pick where I wanted to be stationed. 18 years old, and pick where I wanted to be stationed. And I chose San Diego. I'm from Texas. It's hot in Texas, and I chose San Diego. And that's that was the start. And I started doing accounting in the military. And when I was in the military, I was actually making some money on the side. Well, I was in school rather for as a cosmetologist. I don't know if I ever told that story before. I'm
What?
telling you all. So here, and I was a lot bigger than this right here. So you got this big guy and those cosmetologists, and my buddies would give me a hard time until I had my first party, and it was like, hey, I need to be a cosmetologist. All right.
I
But
need to see pictures to believe this.
I do have
It's
pictures so to show you. But one thing I want you all to get from this right here is that being from and I'm gonna use Soweto or Alexandria, there was no structure, right? No structure at all. What the military gave me, the U.S. military, is that they would say things like this: if you're on time, you're late. If you're on time, you're late. So we had to be there at 6 a.m., but you really had to be there at 5:45. If that made any sense. So I like that time structure, and then everything was all about process. Okay, in life you want to have systems. Save yourself some time, energy, and money. There you go.
Mm,
Okay.
mm. So I assume those structures, if I can put it that way, or systems, if you want to put it that way, or frameworks of thinking, would you say that helps you in business?
Oh gosh, no doubt, because business is so competitive. Every company is competing with another company. Everyone's competing for different roles. And I've always told people, if you want to get to in order to go ahead, you got to grow ahead. Okay. There are 5 levels of leadership, five levels, 5 levels. The first is you have to be able to lead yourself. Okay. And when you lead yourself, there are 5 areas within leading yourself. You may have heard me say this before: your faith, your fitness, your finance, in your family, and even the things that you do to have fun. I took singing lessons a couple years back because I was looking to sing a solo. A solo, you couldn't hear me. So anyway, but that's the first level. And then the second level is you have to then be able to lead others. And if you call yourself a leader and you're not leading others, you're just taking a walk.
Mm,
And the worst thing that can happen when you're taking a walk is your shadow say, hey, bro, you're in my way. The third level of leadership is leading teams. Teams, TEAM, right? Together, everyone achieves more. If you got a big vision, I got a company over in the US, we have an office here, and the way we get things done are with teams. I got a big vision, we have a strategy, we break it down in small pieces, align people's passion with an area of positioning of need in the company, if that makes any sense, right? The the next level of leadership, fourth, is leading organizations. So as a CEO, and what does CEO stand for? Anyone?
Chief Executive Officer.
No, it doesn't. In
Ah.
my book, it stands for Chief Encouragement Officer. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
yeah.
Right. I'm encouraging folks. I'm paying for training. I'm getting out the way. Right. That's what I do in the organization. And then the fifth level of leadership, which in my opinion is the highest level of leadership, is leading nations. Okay.
Mm,
That's when you can make an impact in countries and nations and continents. How can I be over in South Africa when I didn't make an impact over in Atlanta and in my
mm,
community? Does that make sense?
mm,
Right.
mm.
So those are the 5 levels of leadership. Please rewind, replay. Make sure you get this. This is some good stuff right here. And I live by this right here. That's why it's so easy for me to quote it.
Wow. And you mentioned that how can you be in South Africa before you've left Atlanta?
Right.
How did that journey happen from Atlanta to South Africa? Like, at what point did you realize, nah, was it a push or a
Yeah.
pull to
Right.
come to South Africa?
Wow. That's interesting. When I think back on that, right? Because in my prior role before taking on the full role of my company CEO was chief technology, the chief technology officer for a Fortune 500 company, field CTO that he is. And I had traveled, I had gone to, other places, Brazil and Alaska. But in the US, there's a burning desire for Black Americans to come home, right? And a lot of times people will go to Europe and they'll go to all these other places, but they won't come home. And I had met someone,
Why? Why? Why don't they come home?
well, because of what's portrayed
Mm,
initially, right? Growing up, what we saw is we saw the poverty.
Mm.
That's all we saw. And I hate to say it, we saw this one commercial. If you give 30 cents a day, you can bless this kid. And you got this. I know it had to be a audition fly because that fly would come on the same ear, and so that's all that we saw, right? And they talked about jungles, and you never, we didn't see this,
Yeah.
right? And so when you said Africa, you thought, tribal, you thought disease, right? Until I met somebody from South Africa, and they said, "No, bro, it's not like that." Right? And so meeting that person and then deciding to make the challenge to come over is the best thing. But the thing is, I use my perks, and I recommend anyone from the US just looking at this podcast, don't use your perks because it took me from Atlanta to Minneapolis to Amsterdam, and then I came down to South Africa. No, no, no. It was 32 hours, right? Uh,
Sheesh.
but yeah, again, to answer your question, it was because what I saw. But coming over the first time, I was in tears. I was like, this, the weather, the people, it's amazing.
Mm.
And so now I've had so many friends and family members that have come over to South Africa. And in fact, in 2027, on a non-for-profit side, we're looking at having our gala in South Africa. And so we're going to have a lot of folks, the Microsofts and the Amazons, all my friends that are leaders at companies. Their wives have already reached out. The wives are planners. The guys, they'll wait 2 or 3 months before, but the wives are like, okay, where are we going to be staying at? What, what are we doing?
And so, like, one thing that I think is super important for anybody is to go to different places
Yeah,
because it unlocks that awareness that what you see and hear about this place is not the
yeah,
full reality of what that place is.
yeah,
Because I think a lot of the time, like, we look at America, we have a certain idea of what America is.
yeah,
You go there, you realize
yeah,
it's completely different.
yeah,
And that's also why I love how you shared about the military, because when we think the military, we think someone on the ground, about to bash in a door,
yeah,
fire a shot or two here, there. Meantime, there's people that their job in the military is to clean the floor. Like,
yeah,
that never even crossed my
yeah.
mind.
Accounting, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
someone who's sitting there balancing the sheets
yeah,
of the military. Like, you never think of that stuff. So
yeah,
the perception is critical when it comes to understanding your reality. And not everyone in South Africa has the opportunity to go to America. And a lot of people in America might have the opportunity or might not to come to South Africa or understand South Africa. So this is what we're doing is conduits, a bridge. And I think it's super important because, we were speaking earlier about collaboration on a different episode. And in order to uplift, we need to be able to learn from one another. It requires a curiosity to go there and pick something up. So my question to you is, like, as South Africans, what do you think we have to learn from America?
Yo, wow, man. Wow. Okay, this is interesting here, right? I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. Okay. So first of all, let me go back to something that you said about it's important to travel because of the experiences. And the experiences are obviously in the people that you meet, right? And really understanding their story. Because whatever one lacks in exposure, you gain in experience, right? So it's all about, getting the experience. So I think some things to take away, and this is for the, we are very spoiled in the US. Very, 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 very. Okay.
Why do you say that?
I'm telling you this.
Like, at what
Because
point
what,
did you realize that?
like WhatsApp, like we don't use WhatsApp in country, right? We just use our data, right? We use our data. We use WhatsApp, for international for the most part, right? Um, so that's one thing because a lot of transaction happens on WhatsApp, which is fine, right? But for individuals that are looking at hosting group functions, I would say, particularly in the tourism, right? Set up a website and have a way where folks can pick the days that they want to come, the days they the day they want to come, the day they want to leave in their excursions, because we're so used to going to one place, doing everything. We don't transfer money to each other. We do all the transaction over the website. And I would say that for some of the entrepreneurs that want to have more U.S. business, is have you a front, um, a shop set up, or an e-commerce front end, right? Like American Express or Travelocity or Bookings.com. I'll say that, right?
So wait. Can you explain like an example of how you saw a need for this?
Yeah. Well,
Just so like
okay.
we can
So
understand
so
fully.
so I mean, I understand this right. Where there's a need, you bring your seed, right? That's how businesses form. Businesses solving problems. And when I came over the first time, I want not the first time, the third time, I think that's when I did. I wanted to do a safari. I wanted to do the whole wine tour. I wanted to do Nelson Mandela, uh, Allen, you name it, Robbins Allen. And so just working with friends, and everyone knew everyone. It's like, okay, I'm gonna connect you with this person, connect you with that person, right? And it was cool, and I had my little spreadsheet, and I said, think about it. Think about the opportunity here. If you guys were to come together and set up an e-commerce site, and anybody that want to come, because my influence uh, will definitely bring people over for sure, right? But you're borrowing my influence as well, and people, they're gonna want easy. They're not gonna want hard. And if they can go to a website, I can send them a link, and they can let you know what day I want to come, what day I want to leave, the excursions. That's it. Everything's already taken care of. It creates a task on the back end, and now what you can do is you can provide jobs and opportunities for others. Because what happens is these big companies, they're doing that, and they're giving the locals peanuts,
Mm,
essentially,
mm,
right?
mm.
And so I want folks to think as a system, right? There's a book that I read not too long ago, and it talks about system thinking. There's always a follow-up loop, right? Remember, save yourself some time, energy, and money. So that's one thing that I would tell folks, is think as a system, because you don't really have to have a new idea. Your idea only has to be 10% newer than the other person's idea, right? There are no new ideas out there. If you think about a wheel, just use the wheel to change the tire.
Mm.
That's it, right? So that's one thing that I would say. Um, but that's a big thing that I would say is, look at what the U.S. has done from a process perspective, and just repeat it.
Mm, mm.
Right.
Is there anything that you think in America
Oh wow! Oh wow!
that needs to be?
Genetically modified food.
Oh,
If the U.S. can get rid of that, I'm tell you something. I had a
uh,
friend. I had a friend that came over to the U.S. And so good friend, and she came back, and she said, I was telling my friends that, in the America, they have bread that lasts 30 days. In, in Africa, the bread is bad after 3 days, right? So our bread has these preservatives in it, right? Our chicken, like, I eat a chicken a day, right? I got to keep the protein up, right? And it's like a real chicken. I can't eat a U.S. chicken because the chicken is the size of a little small Hyundai. You understand? Because they inject the chicken and the food with the hormones and steroids and all
yeah.
that stuff, right? Because they mass produce, right?
Mm.
And even like a banana is this size in the U.S.
I'll never forget. I went to Florida and I saw an apple that was the size of my head. I was like, how is this real?
Yeah, yeah,
And it doesn't look real. It looks like if you just
yeah,
look at it, it looks
yeah,
like a prop.
yeah,
That's the best way I
yeah,
can put it. So
yeah.
you're saying in America, GMOs
Big time, big time.
gotta get rid
Because
of
what
that.
happens is they have these lobbyists that influence these companies to produce, allow GMO items to be on their shelves.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, if you look at the U.S. is like one of the countries that has the highest rate of cancer,
Mm.
because you got to think you are what you eat, right?
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
eat this, it gets into your cells, and causes delay, and that becomes disease, you name it. But the food for sure. That's why I love being over here, because I'm having fresh mango and
Mm.
apples and watermelon and
It's real.
chicken, and I just love it. And it's pure protein.
Yeah.
You guys, okay, first, y'all don't know what y'all got. Okay. When you go to the US for about a month or so, you're gonna want to come back. And then the family, the values, the culture, I love it. Now, here's the thing right here. If someone wants to be a multi-billionaire, take my advice. I got here one day, I think it was a Sunday. and everything closes at around 1. I think the malls close down early. Okay. And the guy says, "Man, my brother, do you have any business ideas?" I said, "Yeah, open up a business that opens at 1 p.m.
Mm,
and closes at 9 p.m." Because everything was closing at 1 p.m.,
mm,
right?
mm.
In the US, now we're gangsters when it comes to business, though. We grind, okay? I'm serious. You got stores that are open on Christmas, they'll close at 5. Like, we're gonna get employees, from, 6 off, right? So that's something I would say as well.
The the business acumen is different.
Big time.
That's one thing that I picked up as well. So like we had a previous guest that's speaking about how in South Africa it's a relationship driven economy.
Yeah.
So that thing that you mentioned in terms of like having
Yeah.
the system that now you can do the booking, whatever,
Yeah.
the cost of that is giving up the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because instead of now speaking to this person, speaks to that person, you're now interacting with the system or software, right? Um, not to say the one's right or the wrong, right? But I think the way that we go about it is
Yeah.
slightly
You can do
different.
both though.
You can't exactly.
Right.
That's what I was
Right.
saying
Right.
in terms of like the collaboration,
Come
right?
on. Yeah.
Because there's benefits of both sides,
Yeah.
which is why it's important that we have these constructive
Yeah.
conversations where
Yeah.
we learn from one another. And then coming back to like what you're saying in terms of like the closing hours. I don't know in Cape Town, if you ever saw any corner stores in Cape Town,
Mhm.
but I was in Cape Town not too long ago, and the one thing I was picked up on was the corner stores are open all the time.
Yeah.
Funny thing about that is most of those corner stores that are open will be owned by foreign nationals.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it shows the culture
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah.
So that thing of doing business, 100%. I think like we can both learn from each other. You mentioned that in America you guys are spoiled. Is it how else would you say you're spoiled?
Yeah. So our banks as well too. Well, now here's the thing. I have an F&B account, right? And I know people are gonna just start throwing some haterade at me because now I do like that. Don't get me wrong. That app is amazing. I can do everything except change a tire, right? So, but when it comes to the waiting line, like I went to F&B Santon, and I was in there for like at 2 hours, and I had to get a ticket.
Mm,
We don't get tickets at our banks. Literally, you come in the bank, you're in and out within 5 minutes, easily like that. The
mm,
teller, I mean, they have it down to a science,
mm,
right?
mm,
And so there's a system process that they have, at our banks to get you in and get you out, right?
mm,
And and I know because of crime, obviously, you guys can't do this, but we don't go into the mall to go to the ATM. I'm like, we have ATMs in the mall, but we have ATMs everywhere. We can stop and on the street and ATM. Yeah,
mm,
but I know obviously with
mm.
security. So when
Yeah.
someone told me they had to go into them, I was like, wait a second, can't we just,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, no, there are major differences.
yeah,
And I think that's why it's important, we hear a lot about your success. We can
right,
see
right,
if you go into your LinkedIn or do that research that
yeah.
you mentioned earlier, we're going to see the wins, right? When it comes to the what goes in
Oh
behind that,
wow,
that's
wow,
that's what I want to get
wow,
into
wow,
because,
wow,
and I know for you, like
wow.
you're optimistic, you're
Yeah,
thinking of the positive, right?
yeah,
And that's amazing because
right,
you need to focus on where you want to go and you
yeah,
need to picture a positive outcome. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people that are not in that space.
yeah,
Um,
right,
looking at someone who's been in leadership roles
yeah,
in something like a Fortune
yeah.
500, what is the time when you felt like you were getting cooked the most?
Well, I think it probably happened before the the corporate life, right? And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of times people they see your success, but they don't see your struggle. Anytime you find somebody that's doing something at an extraordinary level, they experience a lot of pain, right? Anytime you find somebody, and the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just the extra, right? So, what's the extra endurance that they took themselves through? And so I've always said that your breaking point is your breakthrough point. When you feel like you're breaking and your greatest test, it's not a testimony, it's a testimony, right? Right. But you get creative when you don't have the money. So let me share some dark spots because there are dark spots, and I want folks to see that as well too. But I think being optimistic And coming from a family background of prayer warriors, being the first grandson raised by 9 women, that definitely helped out a lot, right? But the biggest thing I would say is I had a speech impediment, and people today they say, "Oh, you had a speech impediment." As I talk, every single word I have to cognitively think about, right? But that limitation actually became my gift. So if you ever hear me speak and how I'm able to accentuate words and the tonality of my words, you see what I'm saying? Right. And I remember, I think I was 12. I was in a play at church, and you all have been at plays where you have to recite scripture, obviously, right? So I can remember as a little boy getting up in front of everybody and looking at those eyeballs. And I said, up, 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 up on this rock, I shall build my church, and gates of hell shall not prevail, and I shall hold the key to everlasting life. And but I could barely get it out, right? Because one is the nervousness too, but then also the speech impediment. And that was a challenge, and it stayed with me for the longest, and I always thought about it. And people would ask me to speak. Nah, I'll let someone else. I was good at one-on-one, don't get me wrong, right? But here's the thing right here is that when you know something, passion pulls you. I don't know what it is. Passion just, you just do it. You do it and you don't care what people think about it. And I just remember they needed somebody to speak. This is when I had gotten in sales. I was started out as a sales engineer, and our big speaker, we had two of them. They were well known, and they were like guys. They would show up and crowds would come out and listen to them speak, and they couldn't make it out to an event. And all the folks were coming out, and we had the VIPs from Microsoft, and we had Oracle. Their big speakers were there, their SVPs. And here I am. I had just gotten into sales. They said, "We don't know what we're going to do. We're going to, they had paid all their money." And I said, "I'll do it." And the guy looks at me. He says, "You sure?" So my mind stood up, but my hand was down. But when I got on stage, there's something about when you know that you supposed to be in that spot. And I never forget my grandmother saying this, because that's why it's important to have people that encourage you. She said, "Baby, show them the smile." And so I can just remember I was on stage and I'm just like, and all these people were started showing up, and then that moment when I was 12 years old came out, and I said something, and it just loosened the crowd. And I got up, I put my shoulders up, and I said, "I just drank 2 Red Bulls, and I just had my 60-inch delivered. Put your seatbelt on. This is going to be a quick presentation." Anyway, everybody started laughing, right? So it was so funny. And then I started, and my ability also going after that was all the other speakers before me. You've had people that's technical. They want to talk about the application layer, the presentation layer, the session, the network, the data link, physical as a packet, and then after that takes advantage from one. People don't want to hear that. People want a conversation.
Mm.
And I had a conversation with him. Somebody asked me, "Mr. Ross, explain cybersecurity." I said, "Cybersecurity is like taking a shower. You take a shower every day, nobody really knows about you. Now you go a few days without taking one. That's when you become a threat." It's like, oh wow, people got it. Explain defense in depth. And before they would explain these complex, technical, um, in their jargon, and people just didn't understand it. And I would say things like, you got a person that goes into a shady neighborhood, right? And that person and he jumps the fence, or she jumps the fence. That's the firewall. They kill the pit bull. That's your gateway security. They get into the house and a burglar alarm goes off. Well, that's your intrusion detection system, because guess what? That thief is out there. That thief is after your assets, right? Yeah, something like that. So anyway, so my dark moment was getting past that. I guess that was an
Mm.
obstacle,
Mm.
right? That was one dark moment.
How,
And my second dark,
sorry,
Mhm.
before you go into the second one, how did, like, what clicked?
What clicked is you get to a point in you where you grow or die. It's like, I don't care. I gotta say something, because I knew I was technical. I knew I had this amazing energy. I love people, right? So I knew I had the personality. I knew I was technical. And I knew that this is something that I could only do. And I would be so amazed at these speakers that were so articulate, right? And anything that you want to get better at, you have to do. And I have been practicing, practicing, practicing. But here's the thing right here is that when it's showtime, the word wet don't get you wet. You got to jump in, right? It reminds me of a story. I got to say the story real quick. There was a Texas rancher, and he wanted to marry off his daughter. So he brought the three eligible bachelors to his ranch, right? And so he showed them the ranch, and then finally he took them to this Olympic-sized pool. And he says the first guy that jumps into this pool and swims the length of this pool, I'll give you um, $1 million. I'll give you 2 hectares of land, or I give you the hand in marriage to my daughter. No sooner than he finished, the guy jumps into the water. He must have set an Olympic record. And so the rancher comes up to him. He said, "You want the $1 million?" He says, "No, I don't want that." He says, "Oh, you must want the hand in marriage to my beautiful daughter." He said, "No, I don't want that either." He said, "For crying out loud, what do you want?" "I want another dude to push me in that water." Right? So sometimes you got to be pushed in.
Mm,
And so what you do is you create these imaginary boxes. And I knew that when I got on stage, I had to grow or die. That made any sense, right? Something inside of you stand up, right?
mm,
Just like what you're doing and what you guys do, right?
mm,
It stands up and then you start doing it, you do it, you start getting better. And here's the thing right here is no matter how good you do it, you get at something, you always got to check yourself. Always, because ego, edging God out. And I would go back to my room when I spoke to the Senate, when I spoke to Harvard. I gave a talk at Harvard, 2 talks. They wanted me to come back, right? And I would go and I would say, "Down, boy, down, boy." Or I would say, "This day too shall pass," right? Because what I find is it's the ego that starts destroying
mm,
folks, right? When you
mm.
think that you've arrived.
You spoke.
I am just learning. I'm learning from you all. I'm learning from everybody, if that makes any sense, right?
Mm,
Because if I minimize who I am and I maximize who folks are, people can always get my fruit, if that makes any sense,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
And to be humble, humility is a superpower,
mm.
right?
So, like that thing though, because what I'm hearing is you threw yourself in the deep end,
Yeah.
and when you're in the deep end, you have to learn how to swim
You have to learn how to
or you
swim.
drown. Like
Yes. Yes.
that's the choices.
Hmm.
But that courage
Yeah.
to jump into that deep end, where does that come from?
Yeah. It comes from thinking about where you don't want to be. See, you learn from two different people. You learn from the people that are where you want to be. And when you read their books, because I never had like just mentors that guided me outside of my mom, my grandmother, right, family, right? So you read their books, and when you read their books, it's like talking to the author. And the best book is the Bible, in my opinion. But then you look at people that went down and made a left, right? And they were talented. They were more talented than I was, maybe sports, right? Or some other area, but they found themselves in jail or in prison or dead, right? And so what you do is you say, "I want to be on that side." And when you don't have the coaching and guidance, you can always look at a documentary. So I'm looking at the documentary, The Reckoning of Diddy. I don't know if you guys are looking at it right now, right? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Everybody should have 2 books, one on Hitler on their shelf, and then one on Nelson Mandela, right? Because if you look at the traits, brilliant guy. You see what I'm saying? But used it for self. See, the lowest level of, of happiness is success about self. The highest level is about significance, the influence, the power, the money, the fame, all of that. Imagine what he could have done to move nations.
Mm,
Okay. And history could not forget him. Right. And now he'll be a disgrace in history. Right. I just tell you that because those are the things that I think about. And no matter how hard I ascend, yeah, I'm in the spotlight right now, but this is when I should be going to the shadow. It's so many people around the world that I've been blessed to have mentored, men and women, okay, that I'm transferring what I have to them, okay? That's what it's all about because God is, He has the vision. I'm just a visionary. The visionary will die. I won't be here too long. You won't be here too long. The only difference between a marathon and a relay is everyone wins, but everyone doesn't win unless you pass the baton. And this is from the late great Dr. Miles Monroe. Love that guy, by the way. Right. So anyway, I know I probably gave you a little bit too much, but I just wanted to add a little bit of context behind that.
Yeah, and I also want to bring more context in,
Yeah.
right? Because here in South Africa, right, we're coming from a background of apartheid. One of the things that we see in our
Yeah.
culture is a lot of people are in a constant state of survival.
Yeah.
So what lands up happening is how do you think about next week, next month,
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
year, where you want to be, where you don't want to be,
Yeah.
when right now you're thinking about what I'm going to eat tonight?
Yeah. 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 That's a good point, right? And I have to think that way too, because we have poverty as well. But your poverty is on a different level, right? So let me just get it. I don't want to get it twisted, right? I think it's a few different things to think about, right? So I was just in the bank recently and I was talking to someone and we had a great conversation. We were talking about the Lord, right? And so I'm leaving out, and with all of the things that he can ask me, he says, "Brother, brother, brother, do you have some fruit?" Okay. I'm blessed. And the goal of fruit is to create seed, right? So I reached in, I give him my fruit, okay? And then I'm walking off his brother, brother, brother. I think he's gonna ask me something else. Do you have a spoon? Okay. I just tell you the story because I got it, right? But still, there's still a reframing and shaping of mindset in general, right? Because the words that I have, and a lot of times people meet individuals that have done amazing things, and they ask, we have needs as well. Do you know if he had to come over and pray with me and for me? Do you know that's powerful? He's giving me something.
Mm,
And I'm saying this to a lot of folks. So you all know this. And even in the US, when I go into the gym and I go everywhere, everybody, brother, give me a word, give me a word, give me a word. It's been like that for the longest. But the thing that I always ask is, what did you ask me last week? Oh, I asked you, how can I, develop my apps? What did I tell you? You gave me a workout. What did you do?
mm,
So I always ask people, what did you ask me? What did I tell you? What did you do?
mm,
Right.
mm.
So I think there's a part of it finding out what's in your hand. Everybody has something in their hand. And if you can let me tell this story, because this story is very powerful. And I want the listeners to listen to what I'm getting ready to say. Your resources are your resources. And I'm going to say that slowly. Your resources are your resources. Okay. I hope you get what I'm saying. It's not about me, but it's the people around me. When you get connected with me, you're connected with my resources. You borrow my influence. And when I make a recommendation on LinkedIn and get you connected for a position, guess what? You're going to be at the top of the list. Okay. I tell you this story because there was a man that from Canada that robbed a bank years back. And he robbed a bank and he got away with $6,500, so 6,500 US dollars. Okay. He was apprehended, right? Arrested. And when they were processing him, getting him ready for trial, they realized the gun that he had was an antique gun. Okay. This gun itself was worth $128,000. So 2.1 million rand. Isn't that something? Seriously, it was what was in his hand. Okay.
Yeah.
So I understand that it's hard, but think about what's in your hand. The other thing I do is think about other people that have made it that were in your condition. There's a video going around. Somebody showed it to me. It's a young man on the side of the street, motivational speaker. He's just speaking motivational wisdom. Guess what? I think he's blowing up right now. He's getting paid with YouTube ads. Okay. What's in your hand? Does that make sense?
Mm,
Because if there's a way, there's a will, right? And I tell myself, what if I'm in that situation with my mindset? You take all of my little influence, you take all of my wealth, you put me over here in Soweto, El Dorado Park, with my personality and all this energy that I got, and this big old smile that I got. You better believe I'm gonna come up out of it. I guarantee you, because it's the way I think. You can. Here's the thing right here. I told somebody this the other day. Um, they said I don't really have a lot of money. I said, let me tell you something. What your bank account is a condition. It's not your identity. You can always change your condition, but you can't change your identity. if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so hey man, I'm telling you, I'm hotter than a
We
74
so we're
Corvette with a
gonna
bad
cook.
radiator, bro. Yo, I'm telling you, I told you I was gonna bring this stuff, man. I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm serious. But
Yeah,
but this is my life, and a lot of times people see my life. I can look at a I can I walked past someone not too long ago, and I wasn't gonna even stop because I can listen to people and I can see their future. I can just listen to what they're saying, right? And my life is extremely disciplined. I get up with meditation, prayer, I'm in the gym, what I eat. The other thing is when you feel good and you look good, you do good and you get paid well, you know? And so I always tell people, look great because you put a suit on and anywhere with a positive, pleasing personality, guess what? People are going to already assume that you're supposed to be in the room.
yeah,
I never forget, I think it was a few years back, I came over and I went to Sundown, the rooftop, and I was on the elevator, and it was this guy that was distinguishedly dressed, and I knew he was up doing something amazing, and I wanted to break the ice, and that's why I love personality and I love timing. And I look at this guy and I said, "Excuse me, sir," and he had this serious look. Yes, I said, "You didn't get a lot of sleep last night." And he says, right, yeah, bags on me, mine's wet. So he's pissed off now, right? I said, well, it's pretty apparent your suit slept in the bed and you slept on the floor. He looked, he
mm.
said, oh, come to find out, he was the right hand man to the prime minister for Rwanda.
Sure,
And from that conversation, he was over tech, and obviously I'm cyber, and they invited me to come and speak to their team
sure.
from that conversation.
Yeah,
Seriously, right? So I got stories after stories after stories. I've had people, game bangers. I had a big meeting, a game banger from across the street. This is in the US. He said, "Hey man, give me $100." I don't know what I said. I said, "That's all you want?"
mm,
Because I know what I got. You just want the money
mm,
when I can give you something that's more
more
powerful than
value.
money. I can give you some wisdom and knowledge and get you connected. And so he came over, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath when he got closer. And I said, "Brother, what is it that you do good?" He said, "Man, I can sling these rocks, you know." He said, "I got this little trap house." I said, "Can you drive cars?" He said, "Yeah, I can drive cars." I said, "Let me tell you something, bro. I got a friend that's driving cars from one part of the United States to the other part of the United States, and they have a trailer. And when they get to the other side, people pay them to take their cars to the other end. And guess what? A good friend is the dispatcher. They only want 10% if you know how to drive." And so he was like, "Really?" Okay. So he came over asking me $400, right? And I had just written my first book. It's called One Fry at a Time. If you want to Google it, Renault Ross, One Fry at a Time. Yeah, I got to plug that one. So I had my book in my hand. He said, "What you got?" I said, "Oh man, this is my book, One Fry at a Time." He said, "Oh man," he said, "You deep, bro." He said, "Can I get a copy?" I said, "It's gonna cost you $10." Right? So he ended up giving me $10, right? It's a true story. I can't make this up, right? But I just tell you what's in your hand, right?
Yeah.
What's in your hand?
So I hear what you're saying, right? I have to play devil's advocate
Okay,
here
that's fine.
because I want to try and push this as far as it can
Go
go
ahead. Yeah.
because we're dealing with generational
Yeah.
trauma
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
our country
Yeah.
to the point where your people that look like you,
Yeah.
that come from your culture,
Yeah.
have been told for years, you do not belong in this
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you break that?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a and I'm gonna take it. You say you want to go deep. I don't think anything gets deeper than your prayer and your relationship with God. I remember Dr. Miles Monroe telling the story of laying on a mat with flies around, and he says, "God, you said we can have everything, right?" So there's a faith part that has to take place before anything, right? And then the other thing is, if you don't have inspiration around you, where can you find inspiration? Here's what's sad is that when I drive down the N1 or the N2, I pass all of these shanties. I think we call them shacks rather, right?
Mm.
And one thing that I see in common with all of them, they have a dish networking, right? Dish, all of them. I'm like, your entertainment is really entertainment. And the other things that I see is that everybody has this device. And I'm like, hmm, that's Pocket University right there. Okay. Remember, you only need one idea. If it's selling fruit and singing, you have to have a drive and desire. And I understand that it's hard. Okay. But it's possible. Because if it were not possible, guess what? Someone else that made it would not be able to tell that story. I don't know if you guys know the story of the guy that created Calendly,
No,
right?
no,
Oh man,
no.
you guys got to look it up. He's from Africa. He's from Africa. His dad was an entrepreneur. His dad was murdered right in front of him because of a carjacking, I think, when he was like 13 years old. So his mom sent him over to the States. And actually, he was in Atlanta of all places. And so he found a need, and that need was booking appointments. He could never find a way to sync his appointments with others. And so he created Calendly. And then Calendly, I believe he sold it for over $1 billion US. This is recently, right?
Sure.
From Africa. So he found a need. Here's the thing. It was two salesmen that came over to Africa. One salesman came over to Africa. He says, gee, there's no business. No one wears any shoes. Another salesman, different mindset, different perspective, comes over to Africa. He says, gee, there's a ton of business. No one wears any shoes. Okay. So again, find the need. There is a need, right? And I say that wholeheartedly. And I've seen poverty. I have, right? And I've spoken to folks and I've given them some ideas. The other thing is that we have an NGO and we have an FPO. And even in our NGO, we've had people where I've paid for them to have lunch and have a conversation. And I've downloaded certain things into them. And I said, this is what I'm going to do, right? If it's buying a phone or if it's buying something for them. But I said, I need for you to go through this process. Okay. They never go through the process.
Mm,
Okay. All right.
mm, mm.
So when you're so hungry that you want success like you want to breathe, that's when you achieve it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's when you achieve it.
Ideas are cheap.
Yep.
The implementation of the idea is where the value
Come
lies.
on now. Yeah.
You said it earlier,
Yeah.
you can say wet as many times as you like.
Yeah.
You are not going to experience what it's like to be wet.
Yeah. 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 You seriously. And I always say it's three eyes that will change your life: an idea, an ink pen, and an internet connection. Right?
Mm,
Think about it. An idea. Wealthy people buy distractions so that poor people can embrace distractions. Right? It's so much motivational content, so many podcasts out there. This is a unique one. That's why I'm back. I love it. Right? So people can get motivation and inspiration. They can remember these quotes. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. But having an idea that you strongly believe in, but then having an ink pen, because if you can think it, you can ink it, right? I can't tell you how many times ideas come to me when I'm walking, when I'm sleeping. I gotta get up, I gotta write it down, right? And then an internet connection, it gives you connection to everything else because you can Google it. And with Chat GPT and all of these different platforms, everybody is looking for someone else to collaborate with. The other thing is that when you get with just people that are at a high mindset level, you can take your stub of the idea and it will be enriched within the circle, right? So when I get around my friends, when I talked about this idea that God dropped into my lap last year called Zero Poverty, how we're going to eradicate poverty by year 2050, I said, wow, God, that's deep. But God would not have given me a vision if he knew that I could not carry out the strategy to execute, which I've executed our non for profit. We've had galas in the United States. We're changing lives. And I said, well, how would I eradicate poverty? It's not just me, it's others. Healthcare, education, clean water, jobs, housing, and wildlife. So those were the 6 areas. And then he showed me the G7. So I said, if I use the G7 as my template, and all the G7, like the G20 does, it pulls together the wealthiest nations. They share best practices. They talk about social and political issues that they need to raise to a legislative perspective. So advocacy, right? And then the third thing is they set the agenda for the next year, right? So forget all that Trump and something. Hey, that's between them. Trump is in the White House, but he's not in my house. I love y'all. Okay, okay. So I tell you that we're doing that now, and we had our first meeting with other CEOs that have a humanitarian heart up in New York, and we have a lobbyist engaged. And so I tell you that because I have people that's part of that founding committee. One person is the advisor to one of the nations. Okay, I don't want to put it on blast right now, but he's on my board. And when we shot the podcast last time, that was our second time. We have folks from the U.S. that come over.
Mm.
So if you don't know the power of one, you've never had one um, mosquito in your room. I don't know if you had a Soweto mosquito in your room because that mosquito will keep you up all night long. You just need one idea, one shot. Seriously, dog.
Mm.
I am man can count the number of seeds in an apple, but God can count the number of apples in the sea. Right? We're all apples in the sea. Seriously, though. Okay.
So just to recap, right? You're speaking about the potential that we have within us
Yeah.
and how in order to unlock that potential, we need to do what?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So here's the thing right here is that a lot of what we've been talking about today has been knowledge, right? But knowledge without action is useless, and action without knowledge is dangerous, right? So you got to get the knowledge. So what I would say is the first thing, if you want to have an unbelievable life, is start with what are your goals. I tell everybody when you come to me, I always ask people, what's your goals? Because if you don't have any goals, I can tell you what your future is going to be like. And the way you should structure your goals, I actually have a goals template that I've shared with people around Africa, also in the United States as well. And I actually use it too, right? I have a faith goal. I have like one of my faith goals is I typically stream service, but I had a goal that at least 2 times out the month, I want to go physically and I want to serve. I have fitness goals, right? Like, okay, well, I got a 6. Can I get an 8? Right. But, fitness is nutrition and health, right? I have finance goals, right? You may have heard what I do with 1 rand is I tithe, invest, save, and spend, right? I have family goals and friend goals where every Friday it's Friendship Friday. Any friend that I have, or my friends that I have, brother, they pick where they want to go and have dinner at. They pray I pay, right? That way I get a chance to catch up with them. They can eat at a nice restaurant. That's within reason, right? Right. And then last but not least, have fun goals. So start with your goals first of all, because if you take the first 2 letters of goals, it's the go, right? An acronym that I created for goals is getting over all limitations, right? So start with your goals, okay? The next thing you do is think about how can I create systems. I got a system for getting things done. Time blocking, because there are so many distractions that we check our phones 96 times a day on average.
Sheesh.
That means that we waste 2 hours a day easily. I love math. Let me bring it home. 2 hours a day. That's 728 hours a year. In an average lifespan, which is 38,395 days, that's 24 years. So a lot of times, a lot of folks have lost 24 years of their life just scrolling scrolling rather. So um, time blocking and using systems where you can concentrate. So goals, creating systems. Oh, one of the biggest things that you can do is get you a mentor. Get you a mentor and invest 3% of what you make in yourself. A lot of times people want to invest in themselves. I can't tell you how many times I get with people and I give them all of this and I give them a book and I ask, here's a goals template, and they do nothing with it. And when they see me the next week, oh, I saw you on a podcast. Oh, I see you. And it's not about me. My success is it's not about me. It's how can I help you out? And there was somewhere I was going with it. Oh, yeah, I want to say this right here. This touched my heart. Just happened to me the other day. I went to lunch with someone, and when I went to lunch, the first thing that they did is they went in their pocket. They took an envelope full of rand. They had just stopped at the ATM, and they said, "You're the gift to me, and I want to be able to bless the gift." Right,
Wow.
right. I poured in so many people's life, and I've done personal coaching and things of that nature. But a lot of times people just take it for granted. And if you take anything for granted, granted will take anything away from you as well too. But for that person to see the gifting in me, right? And you better believe they're on fire with some things that I've shared when and do the thing and get the power. And when I gave them some advice, particularly with wanting to get into cyber, I sent them something that night. They had already taken the first module and they had gotten us 97%. Okay. So time waits for no one, as you know, right?
Wow. Talking about cyber, one of the biggest challenges we have in South Africa is scams,
Yep.
especially in the digital world.
Yeah.
And you're talking about this thing of building systems where you can pay with your card or your
Yeah.
credit card online and all that. A big reason why you don't have that here is because it's not incentivized. And the reason why it's not incentivized is because the majority of our population is not likely to use a system like that. So, first and foremost, there's a lot of people in South Africa that don't have what's required to open a bank account. So you can't even get a card in the first place. But then people that do have cards or people that are engaging in e-commerce, one of the challenges that they need to overcome is the fear of being scammed. People saying that you're going to get this, and that if you just pay this money, and then obviously them not getting their money. Now, someone who's in cybersecurity, what kind of guardrails can one put up against being scammed in that context? And then beyond that context, going into the world of AI, how do people protect themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a loaded question. So a part of it is um legislative. I mean, they have to push policies out. I know you guys have the poppy, which is the data protection act, so how your data will be used. um they in the US, let me talk about the US and then I'll talk about here. So in the US we have something called PCI. So what PCI is, payment credit card industry, meaning that any um merchant that's collecting a credit card has to have what's considered to be a PCI audit, meaning that someone has to come in and make sure that the information is encrypted, the terminals are secure, right? That's in the US. Now, obviously, for some of the smaller merchants, that's going to be hard, right? Because you got to, pay to have those additional services, right? But there are things that they can put in place, such as just basic stuff, such as multi-factor authentication, right? Making sure that you're who you say you are. Right. That's one easy thing. The other thing is what I do a lot is I have um, I have alerts and triggers and thresholds because things have happened to me over in the US. Few things have happened to me over in South Africa, right? But I got so many bells and whistles that go off, right? It's like, okay, so what? You got 200 Rand, right? You didn't get X Rand, right? And so those are called detective controls, right? So again, there's things that need to happen at the government perspective, for the larger merchants to make sure that there are, ways to audit to make sure that they have the right technologies and protocols in place. But for some of the smaller merchants, you're making sure that they protect themselves. They're vigilant around looking at the accounts that they have, and so there are a number of things that they can do at a micro level. But I do realize that there are challenges. Now, one thing I'd say is if an organization is looking at doing business with the U.S., that whole e-commerce site, you want to definitely make sure you're protecting a credit card, for the individual. But then those that can't afford insurance, like I have cyber breach insurance, and that takes care of if there's a breach and things of that nature. So you want to have that. So it's really two different scenarios for sure. But there are things, as I mentioned, from a small, micro level to larger organization, because larger security is really defense in depth. You want, and there's a saying that you guys actually have in South Africa is that you just want your house to be safer than the next person's house. All right. And so whatever you have, put protocols in place to make it safer than the other merchant,
Mm.
right? Right. So maybe I didn't answer that, but I just wanted to kind of give you a kind of a broad, my broad perspective. Now, when you think about AI, artificial intelligence has been around since 1930. People are saying like, "Oh, AI is here." AI has always been here, right? But AI, they people, well, AI takes jobs. Well, AI would take jobs for people that don't understand AI, right? If you don't understand prompt engineering. And I tell people, if you really want to become good at AI, learn prompt engineering, because prompt is when you ask a question on chat gpt, it's going to return a response. And cognitively, what question are you asking to get the best results? Because if I got two companies and they equally have AI, what's going to make one company more competitive than the other company is going to be the questions that you ask
Mm.
the AI, right?
Yeah.
So that's AI at a small level. So if you look at the jobs that are out there, data scientists, they have prompt engineers, and you guys have the youngest population, right? What I think it's 60% of your population is under 30 years old.
Mm.
60%,
Mm.
and the highest unemployment with those. So you
Yeah.
got these bright minds, right? And so I know Microsoft is setting up shop here, and a lot of other companies are setting up shop here, to take advantage of some of that AI talent. But hey, here's something I'm gonna give you all. This is a freebie, and you're gonna have a few people that a lot of people I pray they look at this podcast and they get motivated. I can have you run through a wall easily, right? I want you to get activated, right? Right? And I'm gonna give you something. Thank me later when y'all see me. Okay? Gamma AI.
Mm.
GAMMI. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
He's familiar. Okay. Somebody in my company turned me on. They said, Mr. Ross, we need to purchase this. That little application, I mean, before I would go through, put a PowerPoint together and try to find pictures and literally I tell it what PowerPoint I want. It structures the PowerPoint. I tell it where the pictures go.
Mm.
And you can do the same thing with a website. You can do the same thing with a document.
Mm.
And it's free for the first 10 slides. What they call it, cards, rather, right? Learn that. Because guess what? The more you learn, the more you earn. And now what you can do is you can take your skills and put them on Fiverr,
Mm.
because you got folks that they don't have the time,
Presentation.
and you can add value to yourself by putting your skill set on Fiverr. There's a young man, I'll tell you one last thing. I know you got another question for me. He learned during COVID, when folks were catching up on, Netflix and binge watching, he learned web design. And this person that learned web design, I actually was been one of his mentors. Now he has his own web design business, and he's hiring folks from around the world to design not only websites, but he's doing AI, he's doing automation. And he did that in a place where people were comfortable, right? So going back to what you were saying is, this phone that you have is a resource of so many things that you can take advantage of, right? And I think the problem is that it's just so much stuff, and people just don't know where to get started,
Yeah.
right?
Sure. And now we've spoken about the secret ingredients. You've spoken about when you got cooked. You've spoken about a whole
Yeah,
plethora of things.
yeah.
Uh, the one thing we haven't spoken about is what is next on
Oh
the
wow,
menu for Renault.
wow, wow. I'm looking to create my magnum opus.
Mm,
Okay, you know what the
the
concept,
pinnacle.
the pinnacle. So what that is basically your magnum opus, right? It is your masterpiece, and everyone works towards their masterpiece. Beethoven, right? Right? Whoever, whatever writer, singer, Beyonce, everyone has that one piece. What would be my masterpiece? I think my masterpiece is probably going to be some of the things that we're going to do over in Africa. My uh, Someone asked me recently. They said, "What makes you happy? You're always giving." I said, "I want to buy Africa."
Wow.
And they said, "Man, that's deep. Like with Rand or USD?" And I paused on that because I had to drop the mic. But not necessarily buy Africa with money, but buy Africa with mission. If that makes any sense, right? And I think that's my next piece, is that we have an office here. We just signed a contract in Kenya. We'll be doing something in Kenya. We're looking at doing things in Liberia as well. And these are places that we've already um, trained individuals on the non-for-profit side, and also provided our life skills. I think that's going to be the next thing, is our gala that we're looking to do in 2027. And I got to get a residence. I'm just saying. I mean, I just got to go to the spot. My mom loves it. So, this has to be the home base here.
Mm.
So I think that's going to be the big thing. And then the other thing is bringing more folks over to from the US. And I would envision wherever we're planted will ensure folks can come over and serve. I got so many people that want to serve in the health, within education, within clean water, within jobs and housing. They're relying on me. They're asking me, hey man, what should we do? I got an army of 2,000, 3,000 men, and that's white and black and color, which we don't say color, right? White and black, right? They want to come over. They're hitting me up 24/7. And so as a leader, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the breakdown of leader. It's two different words. So you have LEA, which is finder, and then you have DER, which is path, right? So a leader is nothing more than a pathfinder,
Mm.
right? You go the way, you know the way, you show the way. That's it right there, right? And so I think that's my next big move right there.
Nice. Are you buying in Cape Town or Josie?
You know, I want to go where the need is. The need is here.
Mm.
This is the need right here, because I think Joburg gets a bad rap. Right? People say, Cape Town is beautiful. You have Table Mountain. You have. Don't get me wrong. I like Cape Town, right? But Joburg. It's something about Joburg, right? There's a grind. There's a grit, though. So
Nice.
yeah. But then I can have a place also in Cape Town as well too.
Nice. You learn, you earn.
Yeah. You learn, you earn, and you return. There are three phases of life.
Mm.
You learn, you earn, and you return.
It's earn.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Right?
it's a system.
It's a system: learning, earning, returning. Right? And I always tell people, don't kill yourself, skill yourself. That's it right there. Don't kill yourself, skill yourself. Right? Because if you're comfortable, you're not growing. But if you're growing, you're not comfortable.
Mm.
Right? And time is that one thing that we can't get back. Right? I asked somebody this question today. I said, what's one thing that you want more of that you cannot create more of? And he thought for a second, and that's time.
Mm.
So again, waste my money, but don't waste my time. That's important. What we did now, I can't get that back.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Mm.
The
Mm.
three most I want to end on this right here because this is something I was thinking about. The three most important resources you have are your, can you tell me one of them? I just said
Time,
time.
health.
That's an important resources. Huh?
Yeah.
Yep, your time, money, energy. Energy,
Oh,
health is with energy, right?
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so when you think about um there's a fourth one as well too. So there's an energy when you think about your spiritual energy, right? And that comes from just being connected with other people. That's how you build that spiritual energy, all right?
Community.
Right? You think about emotional energy,
Mm.
right? Being with positive people, right? And we talked about the other energies as well too. But the thing that I want to share with everybody is that a lot of times people, they see the outcome, but they don't see the grind. And if you want to get to the next level, you got to think at the next level. The quality of your thinking will always show up in the quality of your life. More people spend more money on the outside of their head than the inside of their head, and they're wondering why they're not getting ahead. Seriously, girl, I got to get my hair done. I remember when Chris Brown was in concert, I was asking everybody, what you doing this weekend? Chris Brown, Chris Brown, Chris Brown. Are you going to see Chris Brown? And I paused. I said, no, I'm not. Because there's a difference between working all week and going to a concert versus thinking all year and owning the venue. Does
Mm.
that make sense?
Mm. Mm.
Because when you own a venue, you sit in a different seat and you have a different glass and it's air conditioning. Does that make sense? So those are some things I'm thinking about as well too, when it comes to ownership as well. But it's so much that we can do. And I just appreciate you. And I just want to give you your flowers. Here's the thing right here, audience. I want y'all, this is God sent, this podcast. Subscribe to it. I'm telling you, this is good stuff because fake flowers may be beautiful, but you can put them in clean water and they won't grow. But you can take a seed. I don't care if it's from Alexandria. I don't care if it's from any other townships, Waito, and you can put it in dirty water and it'll produce fruit.
Mm,
Isn't that something?
mm.
This is fruit right here. And thank you all for having me, been a part of this.
Thank you so much, Renault. It's been an
Okay.
absolute pleasure.
Awesome.